Come on in. Class is about to start.
So
Good morning.
Good morning. What are we doing today?
Today we're going to, I woke up and did the wrong lesson, so I found out this morning I was on the wrong. Okay, so today we're doing 279. It's another one.
We're doing 280.
See? We're doing 280. What limits can I lay upon God's Son? It's another one of those in this set that's about freedom and limitation.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe we could start by thinking about what limitations are in a practical sense. I mean, the big limitation is I am not part of God, and I'm not part of you, and I'm not part of anything. I'm just my little me.
Mm-hmm. In the class I taught this morning, before this one, we asked for, because the prayer in this is, today let me give honor to your Son.
Yeah.
So how does that relate to limits?
Uh-huh.
And the example I gave was, so limits or lack of freedom, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the example I gave is last week, I take meds for peripheral neuropathy to manage the pain. I've done that for 12 years. But I only see my doctor once every 6 months, and I hadn't been in touch with them, and I called. They weren't returning my calls, and I'm starting to freak out. And it's like, oh my God, I'm not going to get my meds. I'm going to die of pain and drive a car off a cliff because my body freezes up. It was going like that. And then
I'm laughing, but yeah.
Right. But then, I recognized, okay, well, something's wrong because I'm scared.
Yeah.
There's something wrong here because I just reason it out. Fear's not part of love. And so what would it mean in this situation to give honor to the Son of God? And in a very practical way, I went, wait a minute. My doctor wouldn't do that. They wouldn't just disappear into space and just leave me hanging there.
Yeah.
So I rethought how I was thinking about the people in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped thinking, oh, I'm in this dysfunctional medical system and it's all this yada, yada, yada stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remembered, well, they wouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was, instead of worrying and anxiety about it, I got my peace back because I thought more clearly about the people in an interpersonal sense.
That's really good.
And that's what he's saying, is that we're always, in some sense, thinking in interpersonal terms, and we're always comparing ourselves to other, and that's how the ego makes separation,
right?
Is through comparison. So when I feel limited by medicine or by anything, my peace is limited, then I have to rethink, how am I seeing the people in that situation?
That's really great. I noticed that there was like a shift from the usual way of thinking, which would be, oh no, what's going to happen? I better manage the outcome here. I better make sure I get my meds, kind of thing. You went inside and said, I'm feeling afraid. Something's wrong here.
Yep.
Something's wrong in my mind.
Yep.
That's the miracle, isn't it? That's the shift in perception that enables the light of God to come through.
Yep.
And then it got solved. You went up and you saw a note on the door. They're moving.
Yeah, I mean, pragmatically, it wasn't even an issue.
Yeah.
But was an issue was me realizing I've lost my peace. I've limited the peace that God is offering me. It has no limits.
Right.
And so that idea of limits, and what he's also, limits and then freedom or bondage, and just before that he was saying, none of my condition of creation is affected by my inventions around the body to make the body more secure or to make it more real. That's another way that we limit our peace.
Yeah.
Is by these, I think I have to live by the rules of physicality, by the rules of medicine, and now I'm a victim of those rules.
Right. Yep.
And I freed myself.
You did.
I stopped limiting my peace.
Yeah. That's great.
And it was rethinking the interpersonal relationship.
That's great. So some of the things that I thought about how I limit myself are beliefs that I can't do this. This won't work. He won't let me. She won't let me. They won't let me. That's not allowed here. You know, all of those kinds of things, or even emotional feelings like what you just talked about, fear. I feel so bad. I feel so guilty. All of those things are just such a contraction. And what he's trying to get through to us here in this course is that we have the power of the Christ.
Yeah.
We have the power of the Son of God, not as myself, but through this instrument, this body, this brain, this situation can be a channel for the unlimited love of God. And that's the bondage we're trying to break out of, is the belief that we're not that.
That's right. And you know what's interesting about the Course, and I've said this a number of times, is that in traditional Christian teaching, physicality was not questioned. That's what God created. He created bodies, he created the physical world. And that in itself is like thinking in terms of limits.
Yes.
I'm identifying with this physicality, but in that system, and rightfully so, it was like, okay, well, drop your ego kind of thinking and turn to your higher power, or turn to God, or turn to the Holy Spirit, and then you get your answers, and that's entirely correct. But the Course is saying, turn to your true self also.
Yeah.
Not just my higher power, not just God. God gave this true self everything it needs.
And the true self includes every other person.
That's right. Right.
Animals, plants, everything.
Right. But it's not just God or my higher power. It's my very self that has this answer. Mm-hmm. Right? That's what he said in this, what is the Christ, through this whole set of lessons. You've never left God's mind. You're completely innocent. Mm-hmm. Right? And you've never sinned.
Yeah.
Right?
These are big thoughts.
Yeah, but then also you have everything in terms of what you need in terms of forgiveness.
Yeah. When we forgive, or when we let go of the belief in our limitation, then which is another way to say forgiveness.
Yeah.
Then we see that we do have everything.
Yeah.
Just like in your example, when you let go of your belief in limitation, oh no, what would happen? When you let go of that and said, wait a second, that can't be true.
Yeah.
And you went to your true self,
yep.
The self that is love, your doctor's love for you.
Yeah.
The whole thing, when you went to that level of thought, you knew everything was going to work out, and it did.
Yep. And so that's a big turnaround in the Course, is begin to rely on the truth of who you are. Yeah. Not just God's grace, not just the glory of God in that. It's your glory also.
Well, yes, and that is what the Christ is.
Right.
I mean, we have to be careful when we talk to people about things like our glory, our power, that we're talking about the power of the capital S self that includes everyone.
Right.
It is the one self.
Right.
It's like we're just like little dots. This thing here is just like a little dot that is an opening to the big true self.
Right. That's why in this prayer, it's all about about your interpersonal relationships. It's saying, it's talking about.
Well, let's read it. Today, let me give honor to your Son. Capital S Son, everyone as one being. For thus alone I find the way to you. Father, I lay no limits on the Son you love, and you created limitless. The honor that I give him.
Now him, here's the key. So it's not just this one self that never changed. Right here, in the seeming limited self, I have all power and honor.
And so does he.
And so does this. So that's why thinking about my interpersonal relationships was so important.
Yes.
Because I went back, well, my doctor wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah.
So the honor I give him is not capitalized.
Mm-hmm.
It's individual. The honor that I give to that particular politician, the honor that I give to my friend, the honor that I give to every individual, regardless of what ego would judge,
Right.
is yours. The honor that I give him is yours, Father.
Mm-hmm.
It's the honor due to God as that person. Wow, that is so huge. That's kind of putting the challenge of forgiveness right up in front of us.
Yeah, right. That's our job. So it's talking about three things there: the other being, my being, and God. And the truth of who it is, how I see myself is how I'm going to see God.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why there's no order of difficulty in miracles, because I can change how I see myself,
Right.
no matter what the situation is.
Yeah, and changing your idea of yourself means, to me, going to that place where, what does God think of me?
Mm-hmm.
Does God see me as a victim?
Right.
Does God see me as sinful and therefore deserving punishment? No. So those things can't be true. Those things must be of the ego.
Right. In fact, that was your practice for quite a while. Did God change his mind about me?
Yeah.
I remember when you were doing that.
Yeah.
That really sort of focused your mind. Like, has God changed his mind about me?
Yeah. There was a person in my life who was really being cruel. And I mean, I think that's a judgment. Everybody would agree. And I was agreeing. And I was the victim. And I was getting really depressed. And then I came across that line in the Course. Mm-hmm. Has God changed his mind about me? And it was like, well, why am I agreeing with her idea of who I am?
Yeah.
Why am I agreeing with that? God thinks that I'm worthy. I'm beautiful. I'm helpful. I'm useful. I'm his beloved. Well, who do I want to agree with? The attacker or God?
Would you say that, because you talked about it got very depressing for you to think of, would you say that part of that depression is a sense of helplessness?
Yes, and that's the limitation.
That's it.
Yep.
That's exactly what you're helpless. There's nothing you can do. It's just fixed, done, end of story. Deal with it.
It's true.
Grit your teeth.
Yeah, right.
Just grit and bear it.
Yeah, yeah. So you have to ask yourself, why would we choose to think of ourselves as limited? And the Course has answers for that. It all comes down to insanity,
Yeah.
Yes, desire to be separate from God.
Yeah.
You know, there's that place early in the Course where it talks about we left the Garden of Eden because God wouldn't give us special love.
Right.
You know, or maybe that's in chapter 13. It's like, Daddy, make me special. I want to be more special than everybody else. And he says, no, I love everyone just the same. Everyone is one with me. And we go like, well, then I'm going to just go off and be myself. I'm going to just do it my way. And the only way to be separate from love is to go into hate. I mean, it all amounts to that, right? Yeah. Fear, worry, anxiety, depression, right. All of those separating feelings.
Right.
It's all just, according to the Course, a desire to separate from God.
So would you say that the Course's response to our desire for special love, the Course's response was to make everybody special?
That's what he says.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
And by special, he means you have very specific,
yeah.
very particular, very
That's
specific right. learning situations with very specific people.
Yeah.
It's not abstract.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, that's just uncovering these ideas that we're not always aware of, like, my mother told me I was this. when I was little, right?
Yeah.
And
I believed it all my life.
And those are the sort of tapes that are going
Yeah.
on. And that's how he's training our mind. Find out those specific interpersonal situations where you were told you were either helpless or little or something, and uncover those.
Yeah.
So when he says that specialness, the holy instant, holy relationship, doesn't necessarily mean you and another body. It just means you're comparing yourself to your old self or your new self or to what somebody told you, like you said to that person, why should I believe what they're saying to me?
Yeah.
Right? And so it's those interpersonal contexts that seem to be so key to unlocking our power and our freedom.
I mean, that's where forgiveness is generally applied. And I think we can almost always go to it. But let's look in terms of sickness or poverty. They don't appear to be interpersonal.
Right.
So you have to deal with it as it is, as it appears to you. It's like we have to correct from the bottom up. You know, go right to the ignorance, go right to the insanity, look right at that and begin to unravel that. So anything that we say, I can't, I'm limited here, it just isn't going to work, I have no control over that, they did this, so this happens to me. All of those kinds of things. Well, let's take sickness, because it doesn't appear, in most cases, to be interpersonal. Maybe at this juncture in our history, it does, but most of the time it doesn't. Accidents, you know, that kind of thing. It just seems like, well, it just happened. And the Course is telling us we have to take responsibility for everything that happens to us. And it asks us in the manual for teachers, the 5th question is, how is healing accomplished? And it says in there that we resist healing because we don't want to move off of our victim mentality. We don't want to be responsible for our thoughts.
Right.
If we did, we would have to look at the power of our thoughts, and it would scare us.
Right.
Because we'd see, oh, all of these horrible things that happened to me, I'm doing it to myself. And we feel guilty about that because we haven't yet experienced the forgiveness that would heal us.
Right. And it's really important to understand there that when we ask the question, why would we separate from love? That in the end, there is no reason for that because it's crazy.
Because it hasn't even happened in reality.
Right. And we do want the love.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So I think that's the idea of, you know, one of the ways the Course defines the ego's desires and its seeming reality is, what can I get to myself alone? What can I have just for me? Remember, that's what it said.
Oh, yeah.
To single out, to make alone. That was the essence of specialness. So how does the Holy Spirit deal with that? Well, what the Holy Spirit says is your mind is very powerful. So whatever you made, the Holy Spirit has to use to teach you a different lesson than the ego's.
Exactly.
So how did he handle that? You and you alone have to make this decision to accept the atonement for yourself.
Right.
You can depend on God's power and His grace, all of that, that's all true. But you alone have to make that decision.
Right.
And when we start to do that, we begin to remember our true power.
Right.
Because that's what we've been saying lately, is that we're scared of our true power. We're scared of our freedom because we think we actually used it to separate from love.
Yeah.
So
that's right. That's what it says in that question 5 of the manual.
Yep. And so every situation I come into, I begin to discover my new power by me making a decision. And then once I make that decision, then the Holy Spirit takes over.
Yeah.
Then I have all that power.
Right.
Then it's not just about me anymore.
Yeah.
But we've got to make that decision.
Yeah, we have to make a decision, and we have to recognize we don't like the old decision.
Right.
We don't like the idea that we're in chains. I mean, these last few lessons, let me not bind your son with laws that I made. And it uses the term hide the freedom. And the next one, if I am bound, my father is not free. I'm prisoner in a body. That's one of the beliefs. Frailties and sins, which I perceive are real. All of this is just, and then yesterday's, this is one I really liked. Should I wait in chains which have been severed for release when God is offering me freedom now? Do I really want to be limited? We have to look at, why do we want to be limited? Because we're afraid of God, ultimately.
Right.
We're afraid of love. And I think that's why the course is interpersonal. It's like, if you were afraid of love and I offer you love, you can experience it as safe.
Right, right.
And if it's safe, then maybe it's okay to trust God.
We've often talked about this, but you and I, just personally, of the idea of having a partner in your life. There's somebody that loves you, and you have somebody to love. Mm-hmm. But it's part of that is allowing others to love us. Mm-hmm. So they're learning, they're loving.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's like, a little example, like you're fussing with my thing here, and you're, my
cutting his eyebrows and stuff,
or whatever, and I'm going like, don't. But it's caring on your part. It's letting you care, and then you learn you're caring.
Yeah.
And it's not a phony little setup.
No.
We actually believe when we let others care for us, that they're learning, they're loving.
Well, all you have to do is look at a mother and a baby, or a father and a baby, and it's like, that baby isn't exactly loving them back. I mean, I don't think it is. Maybe it is. But as a parent, you don't experience the baby as loving you when it's just a newborn. It's just like, it's in shock, really. It's just in shock.
You don't say to the infant, it's your turn to do it.
No, you just give love, and you give it what it needs, and what that does is expands your own heart so much, just because giving is receiving.
That's right.
Yeah, regardless of what the other one is doing.
Yeah, and this, I focused this morning on this. You were just mentioning these lack of freedoms, and the bondage is a lot of associating with yourself as a body.
Oh yeah.
The rules that we set up. I'll be happy if my body is this, and all that kind of thing. And but just before that, this is God's healing voice protects all things today.
That's lesson 275.
That's where it really gets into this interpersonal idea of solving the problem, because it's saying, Father, your healing voice protects all things through me, right? And so that voice in there is saying, you'll tell me what to think, where to go, what to say, and to whom, and what to say to them, what words to give to the world, right? So it's very much these interpersonal contexts. And it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a body. There it can be you and your father and what happened 50 years ago, or whatever it is. Right?
Yeah, right.
But it's interpersonal.
Okay.
Yeah.
I look at, to me, this interpersonal theme had not occurred all that strongly to me. Mm-hmm. I was really looking at it more in terms of self-concept.
Yeah.
And I mean, all these things work together. Mm-hmm. But when I think that I am unable to give love in a certain way, I can't give money to that person panhandling on the street, because what would happen to my bank account? I can't. There's a lot of I can'ts in this world that are really just attempts to hold the ego in place as I am this body. I am this little life. And for these ideas creation's freedom promises my own. What God created limitless is free. These ideas, for them to become real, the insignificance of the body has to rise up in our awareness. We have to become aware that we are eternal, limitless, infinite, deathless beings. So to defend the body, to defend the small self, is a waste of time. And that's all it is. It's not sinful. It's just painful.
And then the really loving move, the course, as far as I can see, the really loving move is he said, well, then you're no longer identifying yourself with the body, but the body then has a function. It can become a communication instrument.
That's it.
Right?
From Holy Spirit through you to the Holy Spirit in another person.
Yeah.
And that's how healing is done in the Course.
Or the self, the Christ from here,
Christ
the
self.
Christ is there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this, like he's been encouraging us, instead of seeing the world and the body, see the Christ.
Yeah.
Right? Perceive with Christ's eyes.
Yes.
Look, like this injunction in this, what is the Christ was, just see the face of Christ. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Can be our only perceptual awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Then when we think of ourselves and someone else,
Mm-hmm.
instead of using the body's eyes
Mm-hmm.
to interpret what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
we use the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Right? And then this Christ is just healing himself.
Yeah.
That self.
That's what accepting the atonement is.
Yeah.
Right? So in some places it says, Holy Spirit in me sees the Holy Spirit in you.
Yeah.
Some places it's I use Christ's vision to look upon the face of Christ.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that much which one you use. Pretty much the same thing. And both of them are techniques to let go of limitations.
Yep. That's the
We
beauty.
are the one self.
Yeah. That's the beauty of the Trinity. Whichever one, that comes up.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Whichever one comes up is.
Whichever one, I mean, that's sometimes the mood you're in, right? It depends on that. But
Yeah.
it's, just those moments, we wouldn't be doing this unless our constant experience has been, we forgive ourselves, or we in some way bring our spiritual life in. The world or the situation doesn't change, but we've changed.
Yeah, and really, then the world situation generally does change, but not because we're trying to manipulate it.
Right.
It's because we changed the mind that's producing it.
And wouldn't you say too that that's also this idea that there's no reason for you to have to struggle with the world or even struggle with your body, because now you're standing on spirit.
Yes, and we see then that the world and the body are effects of the mind.
Yeah.
And we choose to think with Christ rather than with the ego. So all is solved.
Yeah.
That's the big miracle.
It is.